to talk a little bit about gender equity or inequity, as the presentation I've prepared is titled Persistent Inequity, Gender and Academic Employment. So I'm looking at academic careers from the point of graduate school through faculty members and up to college presidents. It's now the case that women make up the majority of students. In fact, it's about 60% of students at the undergraduate level, and we've now reached the point at which women are earning the majority of all degrees awarded, including even doctorates and professional degrees in law and medicine. But when these women, who are the majority on our college campuses, look around at the faculty, whether they're looking for mentors, advisors, role models, they're not finding women in the most senior positions especially. Only 28% of all full professors, which is the most senior rank among faculty members, are women. Women are more likely than men to be employed in community colleges, and they're also more likely to, and they're less likely to hold positions at doctoral universities. They're more likely to be employed in part-time positions and in non-tenure track positions. So when it comes to salary, let's see. No? Okay, I think the slides were reversed possibly. But so when it comes to salary, women full-time faculty members earn less than men even when they hold the same rank. And there are a number of factors that are involved in traditionally explaining that difference, and I'll get to that in a moment. But as a result of the differences in the types of institutions where they're employed and the fact that there is a salary disadvantage even when women are at the same rank, and they tend to be in lower ranks, the overall average salary for women full-time faculty members has been at about 80% of what men earn on average, and it's been that way for at least 35, if not 40 years. Frankly, the AAUP has been conducting salary surveys of full-time faculty for about 50 years. Unfortunately, we've only been collecting them by gender for about 35 years, but in that entire time, the overall gap in salary among full-time faculty members has really not budged at all. And because women are also overrepresented in the part-time faculty positions, which pay much, much less, only a fraction of what full-time positions pay, the gap in earnings is actually even higher than what I'm showing here. And so this is just one chart that shows full-time women faculty members' salaries as an average of men. The left three sets of bars are the upper three ranks, the full professor, associate professor, and assistant professor. And then on the right, you see the overall average. And if you look at each one of those groups, they've barely moved at all over the course of 35 years. So how do we explain this persistent inequity? The most common, unfortunately, explanation is that it's a matter of choice. And I always put that in quotes, and I'm using my air quotes up here, because the choices that we're talking about are not free and open choices. They are constrained by expectations about what women's role is, by continuing assumptions about who will be the caregivers and who will provide the kinds of service and support work, even within academia, that are not as well rewarded in terms of pay. And I should also say that in quantitative social science, which is where I come from, there is not so much this rhetoric of choice, but there's the idea of explanation, of explaining the differences in salaries by creating statistical models that account for a number of factors. The problem with that is that there's really no further step which looks at why is it that there are differences on all those factors that make up the overall difference, and what can we do about that? I think that's where we need to go now, is taking that next step and asking the next question, not just quantifying the difference, but figuring out why all those factors contribute to making up that difference. The trend data that we have over the course of 30 or 40 years indicate that gender equity, achieving gender equity, is not just a matter of time. We really need to continue to raise this issue in forums like this, by reintroducing the Paycheck Fairness Act, by getting the debate much more out into the open public. And I think it's very important that we explore the subtle and even subconscious ways in which gender disadvantages are perpetuated. Policies alone are not enough. We need to have open and frank discussion, and I think we need to do some introspection in terms of what our assumptions are, what some of the internalized stereotypes we have about the roles of women and men that have served to perpetuate these inequities. And I feel I would be remiss if I didn't make a note of the lack of gender equity in this room today and at this event. And I think as long as gender equity continues to be perceived as a women's issue, we're not going to get very far. So that is probably the most fundamental thing that we need to change. My contact information is up here. There's a one-page handout out on the table outside. I have a full detailed report with lots of charts and lots of data, and I'd be happy to send that to you, and I'm hoping it'll also be available through the AAUW website after the event.